in response.
Grayson Grundhoefer, 365 Sports, SicEm365.com, Senior Recruiting Analyst and also a coordinator, joins us on the show. Grayson, of course, they had the big junior weekend. Your thoughts about what did they expect as far as numbers of commitments? Did they just kind of like getting to shake hands with these guys? Did they expect more since that weekend ended?
I would say that this was more of a relationship building type weekend. It was also a weekend where, Baylor had a lot of their priority guys on campus, but they didn't have a ton of guys on campus. So I think the number was settled right around like 35, 36, something right in that area. And the whole point of it was that every position coach could talk to basically every single player. It was kind of just this mix and match of, coaches going around table by table, talking to different recruits, getting to know them, getting to know their family. And I think that was probably the biggest part of this weekend. And the other thing of it is, and I know Craig and I have talked about this, but currently the numbers Baylor is working with right now is like 15 or 16 scholarship spots. Now, that will, in my eyes, that will probably change by the time this class settles. But right now, they're just not working with that many available spots. And if they're going to increase that number, they'll take a lot of attrition. So I think that's probably a big reason why you're not seeing a ton of commitments from this weekend. But I would also say that I think they brought in a lot of priority guys who have a lot of interest from a lot of other places. And so for that reason, those recruiting battles were not going to be won just this weekend. There's going to be some time, and, those prospects are going to want to take some other visits and potentially take official visits before making decisions.
Grayson, Walker White made his decision. He's going to Auburn. Actually, that kind of surprised me. I thought it would have been Clemson, but Baylor was in the top 3. Does that make them feel better about where they would be with the rest of the QB class that they got that far down the road with Walker White, or where do they stand now that he's at least off the board for the time being?
Frankly, I was stunned that he chose Auburn. Everyone was putting in crystal balls for Clemson. I think that was the natural reaction because of the simple fact that he visited Clemson over the weekend for their junior day. But ultimately, a huge, huge win for Hugh Freeze. So, kudos to that staff. That's a huge gift for them. That was Baylor's top quarterback prospect on the board, and the guy that they really invested a lot of time in. Now, obviously, a very different situation, and I know people want to compare it to the Austin Novosad situation, but it's only February. There's plenty of time to regroup, go figure out some other guys who could become priorities. They brought in a quarterback for junior day in Deuce Adams, the quarterback from New Braunfels Canyon. They haven't offered him yet, but he's a guy who's got a lot of interest from the Baylor staff. And I think they're going to look at some other prospects from out of the state as well, while also maybe recruiting some of the guys that have offers that are maybe committed elsewhere. But I think in general, you're probably going to see Baylor start to evaluate again and start to look around for some of these other prospects that maybe had really good junior years, guys who are out of state that they can go recruit and start building a relationship with. So in my eyes, this is more of just a pivot situation for the staff, even though it is one that is a tough miss because they were able to get him on campus. Dave Aranda and Sean Bell went and visited him last week as well. So there's a lot of, factors there where Baylor was spending a lot of time on him, but they have plenty of time to regroup, go figure out their next quarterback priority because they will be taking one in the 2024 class.
Yeah, I don't understand the comparisons to the Austin Novosad situation. The comparison there would be if Walker White committed and stayed committed till the night before signing day. So I don't know how that's really – they got plenty of time in comparison to try and find the new quarterback. I don't think that those are really the same things there. But, that's interesting and a good get for Auburn. The schedule dropped earlier this week. What were your kind of immediate thoughts with you got first glance at it?
Right. So I think first glance, it was really cool to see that 3 of the new Big 12 teams are on the schedule, and 2 of them are on the road. So I think that's going to be really fun and new environments. I'm particularly excited for that game against UCF in Orlando. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I know all these new schools are going to be super excited to play all these teams. For some of them for the first time, others they've gotten to play in the past, but I think that was the biggest thing that stood out. Obviously, I know a lot of people are going to talk about the fact that Oklahoma State and Oklahoma weren't on the schedule. So I think that's a big deal. I think that's definitely something worth talking about since Baylor's played those schools consistently for years now. But I think ultimately the coolest part is the fact that they're getting to play these newcomers. They get to play Texas again in Waco, which I know is something that Baylor probably wanted because I don't think they want that series to end with that loss in Austin a year ago. So those were the main things to me. And I think ultimately you look at the schedule, and I think it's actually a very favorable one for Baylor. And just kind of going through it, the end of the year schedule gets pretty tough with that Kansas State and TCU matchup. But I think just looking at it, my initial reaction was I think this is easily a schedule where they could go 8-4, 9-3, and potentially be in the running for a Big 12 championship when November rolls around, which really is all you can ask for. And I know that's a lot of predicting, a lot of looking ahead, but I will say this schedule does feel eerily similar to the one that TCU had this year, in which they had 8 home games on the schedule, and that played a huge role in them being able to win all those close games.
Yeah, Grayson, I was just going to ask you about the 8 home games. If you're not going to set yourself up, we don't know how the roster is going to shake out, how all these things are going to change, but as far as the schedule was last year, it was a bear when it came to the road games where they had to go, and even some of those games they won were tough. Here, I don't think you could have asked for a better one.
I would agree with you, and I think last year, they got off to that tough start because they had to go to BYU, and it just was a tough environment. Baylor's passing game was not quite where, it needed to be, and they just struggled. And ultimately, let's be honest, they played BYU at probably the worst time when BYU was still healthy and still playing well. And BYU just was able to grind that one out. So I think this year, Baylor gets those 4 home games right at the beginning. Their first, I believe, in their first 6, 5 of them are at home. The only road one is to UCF, which I know it's kind of like one of those matchups where everyone's thinking, oh, that's going to be a crazy atmosphere, and it probably will be. But that stadium is not massive compared to the ones that they've seen and the places that they've been, when you look at Texas and different places like that. But I think ultimately getting to play them a little bit later on the schedule, getting through that first month and getting to figure out who your team is before going on the road, I think that sets up really nicely for this team.
Grayson, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. I know you've had a busy stretch, incredibly busy with the National Signing Day, even though it was the one, Corey Kelly, and then, of course, the Champions Weekend for the juniors. Do you feel like Central Texas has more higher-level names because of Kobe Black, obviously the kids from Lake Belton, Micah Hudson, the cornerback, the offensive lineman, Selman Bridges, the offensive lineman from Cove? Do you feel like there's a little nice chunk of higher-rated players than in recent years?
I definitely do, and kind of the craziest part of it is, Baylor is not really, it's not that they're not involved. It's just, when you look at the offer list that some of these guys have, I mean, Selman Bridges in the last month might be the recruit that has just risen the most in the entire country. I mean, he's getting offers from everybody, and Baylor was an early offer there. So they need to get him on campus because he was at TCU junior day instead of Baylor's. You mentioned Michael Uni over at Copper's Cove. He's another one who's got offers from everyone, and Kobe Black as well, who you mentioned already. So a lot of talent, like you said, in the Central Texas area, and a lot of talent that is getting offers, more so nationally. This isn't just a Texas, Baylor, Texas A&M type situation. This is a Alabama, Clemson, you got offer, Ohio State, like offers like that. So I think that really changes the dynamic. But you're exactly right. There's a lot of opportunities here for Baylor to potentially land a couple of prospects in the Central Texas area over the next few years, because I know we all look at the 2024 class because that's what's next. But there's also some good athletes in the 2025 class and 2026 class. They're still kind of making their way onto people's radars.
Grayson, have a great weekend. Grayson Grundhoefer, SicEm365.com recruiting coordinator, analyst, Bearcast co-host with Craig, comes out every Tuesday with us here on 365 Sports. The 4 o'clock hour